Right, guys. I'd just like to make an observation, really, on like we're coming up to the end of the year now, and what I've noticed this year and over the years is the news and the doom and the gloom from the UK mainly, and it is a lot of doom and gloom. You very rare get like some really good news from the UK. You know that's positive going forward. It's really mostly doom and gloom. I mean, there's been no like, oh yeah, the economy's upturning. This is inflation's dropping like a stone, and the energy is going down to half, and all stuff like that, But on in contrast, in Bulgaria, there's a lot of good news. I've just had a look this morning, just like even just this morning, there's a website I look at, and look it up, and you'll see what's going on more or less in Bulgaria, because they actually do have news and not just narrative. You know, they actually do reports on things and things that are happening, and it's called Noviniti, Novinete, Noviniti, ITE, sorry, at the end, Noviniti. And if you look at that, and it's in English, so there's no, you don't have to. It is it's an English language website for the news in Bulgaria, and it's pretty good, and it's pretty accurate, and it covers local news and national news and international news, and it's quite good. Like some of the international stuff is just repeating narratives from elsewhere, like Reuters, like to do with like stuff like Israel or the Middle East or something like that. They just import some, cut and paste basically, and they. I don't really look at that anyway, But that's but like just on the internal, I'll just have a look at a couple of articles here, and only 1.5% of Bulgarians experience housing challenges, and that makes sense. And if you read the article right the way through, right the way down, the places where they're having trouble, places like Denmark, which they're high earning countries, and it's because those places, including the UK, have detaching from being affordable for the bottom rungs or tiers or layers of society. I think anybody below the average wage now in the UK is struggling, and even those on that level and slightly above, actually, because a lot of them are in debt anyway, even though they're on decent wages, and they're struggling. And the lower tier, it's like more than struggling. They're like being left behind. And these are big portions of society. And once you get that, I mean, that's broken down. Any country should be affordable for the lowest tier, the minimum wage. You should be able to get through a day on the minimum wage. Now, can you do that in Bulgaria? Now, it depends. If you were renting and you were single and you were on the bottom rung, you'd struggle here. That's probably true of anywhere, but not many people are in that position. Most people are in it. a couple or a family, and most couples both work here. And if you're on the average wage here, and both people are working, then you're doing okay. You're not struggling as such to get through the day. I'm not saying you're wealthy, and I'm not saying, that there's other tiers of society. All I'm saying is, like, if the lower people, if there's two people on the minimum wage, and most people live in either inherited or shared accommodation, right? Then they can get through the day, right? I live, and I've got my house bought and paid for, so that's the only thing that's out of the equation for me. I have a car, a decent car, not a clapped out Lada, anything like that. I've got a Subaru Outback, but not new. I don't have new cars, and I've got everything else: internet, car, internet, food, any food that I want. Basically, I can eat anything I want, on my budget, and I do, and everything else electric, and I live alone, right? And I live on the minimum wage. So there's only one thing that's out of the equation, and that is rent. That's the only thing that I don't pay, which would be around here probably €300 to €400 a month, and maybe less. With my local knowledge, I could probably get somewhere for less than that. But like, that's what I live on, the minimum wage, and I'm not struggling for anything. And the minimum wage in Bulgaria at the moment is 31 lev a day, every day. That's if you work it out, every day. So as long as you're working, you can at least get through the day, And like, when the societies are now dropping off and people are becoming homeless, which they are in the West, that's trouble. That's not, and people on in the middle, on the average wage, they can't get on. If they're not already on a ladder. They can't get on a ladder, what they call in the West the property ladder. So they're struggling forever on rent. So they're now in struggle land, and perpetual, and they're not going to get out of it for the foreseeable future. So that's probably half of the population, or just a bit, probably, maybe less, maybe more, are struggling to just get by, and to and especially if they want to go and get a family, have a family. I mean, that would be probably impossible for most people, or you'd be struggling, and then you get into real shit if you had 2 kids, and say someone lost a job or whatever. And plus, I mean, if you've got 2 people working, you've got to have childcare, and that's it through the roof. That's as bad as rent. Childcare in the UK, if you look up the figures, daycare, and plus you're not bringing your kids up. Then they'll be getting towards adult content in the kindergarten, probably. So that's where it's detached, and like, from what I've seen this year, and I look at the way things go, and the best thing to look at in all these places is don't look at the figures and what they tell you, and people are on this and they're on that, and they're the poorest nation in Europe, and or second to poorest, or whatever, or in the bottom 5, or all you've got to do is boots on the ground and just go around the place and just look at what people have got. When they open the wallet, just look what's inside. If you're behind someone, and they've all got, like now, they've got loads of cards and everything, and that was unheard of 5 years ago. Just 5 years ago, unheard of. And you go into the car park now in Lidl, and my car is probably, I've got to park it out the way because it's one of the most oldest cars in the car park. You know what I mean? Everyone's in all these brand new cars, so you got to think of, okay, what's come onto the scene here actually is all this credit, you know. Now they're getting into that, and which is a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. But like, I don't know how much is attributed to that, and how much of this property, what they own everywhere. There's a lot of people, they own Baba's house, and they'd be getting credit against that, and land. A lot of people around here, because they've moved from the villages and the rural areas into the town, but they've still got the land. They've still got all the land around, the satellite. And the old houses, they've still got them. They've inherited off the Baba, the grandmother. And even they would have had, you know, twice detached land from their parents, you know, who probably may have emigrated, you know, and left stuff. I know a lot of places here which are owned by people who aren't here, you know, that are in Canada, and they're never going to come back. They say they've got intentions of coming back, but they generally, some of them don't come back. They come back now when they're younger, if they're going to come back. And a lot of them have, actually, and a lot of them aren't leaving. And another thing is with Bulgaria, right, is going back to the news, so that's one good bit of news. That's the housing out of the way. Now, the other one, which has always been the case, even when they were on, you know, in a bad way, which may have been a good thing, because a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries and Russia, right, are very low debt to GDP, you know, which is because a lot of it's, you know, if you poor countries, they're internal. They're not like they haven't got access to all this money, you know, and they don't really. It's not their psyche. You know, if you haven't got it, you make do and mend, you know, like the old days in the UK, which is now everything's just on debt, and people are up. I've just explained that. What I think, anyway. So now, Bulgaria, it says here, Bulgaria among EU countries with the lowest government debt, which I knew anyway, what's the case. And they're still there. I thought they might have gone a little bit wayward on that one, if they were encouraged by the ECB to borrow all this money, like Greece and Portugal were, and then they pulled the rug on them, and Spain to a degree. It was all cheap money, and now they're all in the stum. So Bulgaria is still 22%, right? Now you look at others: Greece, 163, Italy, 137. Now these are countries and they'll never pay the debt, and who owes that debt? Is the people. That's a national GDP. It's a debt ratio, you know. So it's on the people, it's on the nation, and they'll never pay it back. France, 112, which is surprising. Eh? Belgium, 108. And these are all like supposed like wealthy countries, which I've always maintained that being in huge debt, nationally, privately, personally, is not wealthy. They just think they're wealthy. They're not. Anyone who's in 70 or 80 grand debt, that's not wealthy. That's not wealthy. I mean, what are you even on about, And you hear it all the time, especially from Americans and the wealthiest country in the world, and look at it, the state of it, and look at all the homeless people. Well, they're not wealthy, are they? That's gone, and you're only wealthy, like in America's case, because everyone wanted dollars, and they could borrow to infinity, which they have, and now it might come to an end, and the UK's the same. It's all built on debt and housing market, which is it's just a money go round, the housing market, and that's what's detached now. That's what's detached away from, and that's because of money printing, nothing else. Money printing, not Russia, not anything else. Not inflation is money printing. That's what it's caused by. Nothing else. It's not caused by like Spain having a bad harvest, anything like that. This is what they tell you, all this garbage, But if you really study the fiat money system, you'll know that that's what causes inflation. Nothing else. Now, inflation's coming down in Bulgaria. Now, I don't know how they control fiscally here, because the peg to the euro, the lev, I'm not quite sure what controls these have got about money printing and the money supply. I'm not quite sure how it works. I really don't know. But what I do know is what they're telling you is not what's on the ground, the boots on the ground, Like I've just been to a few places again on a little road trip, and I'm glad we stayed. I'm glad it wasn't outside the country. Like a couple of days within in Bulgaria, and you're getting the same. And we're going to different areas, and they're all miles away from each other. There's not this north-south divide here. Like there is a different micro economy in Sofia. That that definitely is, but it's not like totally detached from the whole country. I mean, the accommodation there is not, it's not through the roof, and the food in the shops is not through the roof. There are other things that are way more expensive, but to get better wages there as well. So boots on the ground. You go to Sofia, it's bouncing, it's absolutely bouncing. And then you go to we went to Petric just now, which is it's out the way. It's in the corner. It's in the corner of the country. If you look at the map, the country is basically square, Bulgaria, give or take. And it's in the bottom corner. And we went there, and it was buzzing, buzzing. Absolutely. There wasn't people struggling. They're on the up. They're on going that way. People are, and you've got to look at these factors, and what it's like and what it was like 20 years ago when I came. It was gloom. It was pretty in a bad shape, shall we say. But they didn't have certain things. They didn't have big drug problems, and they didn't really have big crime problems that you would have expected in the state that the country was in. And a lot of people just lived off the land, and they were poor, but they all had a goat and a sheep and a whatever, cow. Most houses had like various animals, and they were all growing their own stuff and that. And it looks poor. That if you go round, it does. A pure agricultural scene. does look poor to someone who's from a modern country kind of thing. But that's not the case now. That's not the case at all. A lot of those little villages and that just boom died. They died with the grandmas and the granddads and all the young people. They went to either the next best village or town, and some of them thrived actually, and some of them are still thriving. And if they had like an entrepreneur, they do a lot of these health foods and that here now, and health tablets and all that. And I know one little village that's absolutely thriving because of that. And they make all these herbal stuff and all that, And they make them in the village. They opened a little factory, and if you get one industry like that, which employs like 30, 40 people, that's the whole village employed, And what you get from that, you get like a good shop, you get like all the rest of the stuff, because people are employed. So there's various little villages like that. That one's called Vravabo, and it's doing okay. And the people came from all the other little villages, and those just fell into the soil. They've gone. A lot of villages in Bulgaria that just return to the earth, and that happens everywhere, all over the world. If there's a mine in town, and the mine's finished, that's it. That's it. It's the same with the agriculture and but like what you see here, boots on the ground, is like what cars people are driving, how they're dressed, their demeanour, how they walking with hunched over like counting pennies, and the answer is no. And is it most of them? I'd say 60%, 70%. And the rest of the people, like the pensioners and that, they don't go far. They just stay in the house. And that's all they need. They don't need anything else, They've done their bit, and they may have some chickens, and they all get by. Everyone gets by. And this is the whole thing, because they own the house. They don't have to go anywhere. They've got a shop, and that's what they do. They just get by, but once you're dropping out and getting by, which is if you're in the city and you're renting and you coming up to retirement age, now you're in the shit, you really are, because you can't pay that. It's detached. The rent's detached, and all the rest of it. So you need to be in a position where you own your place outright by the time you get there, at least, and maybe some savings to supplement your pension, because your pensions you're struggling in the UK now on that pension because of all the other things, mainly energy. The energy costs, electricity and stuff like that. So that's why I think this place is doing better, and the Balkans have smaller populations, and it doesn't take much here to move the needle, because there's only 6.4 million people here now, and it's a big place. And if you look at the payments what they get off the EU, Brussels, it's like getting payments for 20 million population. If you work it out per person, these are getting this. They always will be getting the same payments for like road infrastructure or the border. They get money for everything here. Everything. If you look at this website, then they get money for everything all the time. They got money for grain, they got money for all sorts of stuff, Energy projects, they just say, oh yeah, we'd love to be green. But we're so poor that, like, if you give us a load of money, we'll build all this green infrastructure. We'll see what we can do. And then they don't close they certainly wouldn't blow up power plants like they do in the UK or Germany. There they destroyed them. I don't know why they do that. Here they just kind of keep them ticking over, I don't think they even mothball them. I think they just keep them ticking over because they know if you leave it just shut a place down, it'll just rot. You've got to keep it ticking. So say they've got a coal power plant, they'll just run it like, I don't know, once a week or something. So all the emissions and all that, they can meet. I know they do that with the hydro for other reasons, because a lot of that's water storage as well. You get two things with the hydro. You get water storage and you get power. So they don't run it all the time. They don't run it all the time because they'll run the storage down, and it's it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other with the power hydro. You can't just run it and then run out of water. You've got to run it when you get the surplus of water, or they run it periodically, and high demand, I think. They run it then, but they manage it quite well here, the power. And that was the other thing. They've got these in Sofia. They've got these, and they've just switched it on. They've got these central hot water and heating companies, and they pump all the hot water to all these blocks, high-rise blocks. Which, how good is that? From a saving resources, even saving appliances in each house. You don't need a hot water boiler. You don't need a heating boiler or a combi or whatever. And it's all run from a central heating power plant. So that must be more cost effective than every single person in all these blocks having their own system. It's got to be, and the pumps and everything. You got pumps involved, and everything else. So, and that was started here, this company, in 1949. So that was forward thinking. So. That's another thing about these places people don't realise. And they've all got these good tram systems and trolley buses, which is like, I think that's the best one. Not having electric vehicles, because they're a disaster. They are the biggest disaster that's ever happened. And I don't think they're viable outside a city. But here, they've got trams, electric, and a good tram system in Sofia. And they've got the metro, and they've got trolley buses, which I think are the best of the lot. Trolley buses. All you need is the wires in that overhead, and you haven't got all this thing then about these big batteries that have to be made for these buses, and like they're all combusting and blowing up and burning the whole bus shed down. And with the trolley buses, you're just getting the energy straight in to the motor. How good is that? Trolley buses. I mean, what are all these people thinking who are making these electric buses in the West? It's already solved. It's already been done. And even building tram systems, it's quite expensive compared with a trolley bus. All you need is some posts either side the road and like overhead cables. That's all you need. And the trolley bus just runs around like a dodgem car. Okay, so there's a few thoughts, and like, you know, think things aren't so bad here, you know. Cheers.